Give us your thoughts. Reflect on that presser that you were just a part of.
Yeah, I mean, there's been a lot of frustration the past 6 months, like a lot of frustration. I think a little bit came out from Frank there. Frank was a little bit frustrated, showed it. Him and Parker did a deal. There was a question about what currency it was done in, when it was done. And I think the way that Parker and his team behaved in not taking the fight, signing with Sky, walking out of the nightclub with a supposedly better looking girl, and then coming back. And they looked around, they realised they couldn't make any fights for Joe Parker, so they had to come back. So whatever Sky say, they had to come back. But listen, I said it there and I meant it. Credit to Ben Shalom and credit to Frank and George for actually doing a cross-promotional deal. And we really haven't seen that much in boxing to get a fight like this on. I thought it was dead in the water. I'm delighted it's not dead.
There's some genuine needle now between the fighters, because at times it was stern, at times it was funny, and they sort of reverted to type. But it feels like there's more animosity than what there was heading into the first time the fight was meant to happen.
There's definite animosity from Joe on Joe's side. He's just annoyed because he's fed up of me calling him up saying it's almost signed. Throughout this whole process of the negotiation, we got to where we thought we'd be, and then their side is saying, we want one more thing. I gave up telling Joe whether it was signed or not, and it basically got done in the early hours today. Insane.
Made the fight bigger, though? What do you think?
Yeah, I think it has made the fight bigger. The extra needle is definitely... I think it was hard, when people looked at this fight. Joe Parker, great guy. Joe Joyce, lovely guy. How are you going to sell this? Two lovely guys. I think real boxing fans will watch it because they know it's a terrific tear-up. But when you want to get pay-per-view numbers, good numbers, you always need a bit of needle. And it's hard with those two guys to manufacture it. It's not really going to work. People will see through it. But there's genuine needle now on Joe Joyce's side. He is sick and tired of having his time wasted. And I think you'll see it.
And part of that frustration must have been that he goes off to Vegas for big fights. He goes off to camps there. That's not cheap. So essentially, he ended up doing a whole camp in Vegas for Christian Hammer, which maybe he wouldn't have done.
Absolutely. I mean, that is one big part of it. First of all, we had the Andy Lee baby excuse. And we were like, OK, so we put the Hammer fight in because of that excuse, knowing that we would fight September 24th. And then when he pulled out, it was like, well, what's the point of that? So it's incredibly frustrating, incredibly expensive. And, last night, 9 o'clock, I still thought it might not be on.
Well, it is on.
Yeah.
September 24th, AO Arena, Manchester. I mean, Joe, your Joe, has been threatening to leave dents in the face of Joseph Parker. Do you think he can? Not necessarily the dents in the face, but, stop him.
Yeah, I think Joe can. Joe will definitely stop him. I think Joe will stop him. I think Joseph Parker's an elite level fighter. And I think for Joe Joyce to win, you'll see he's got to work on everything he always works on, but it's all going to be about the engine. I think you'll see in this fight rounds 9, 10, 11, 12. We never saw it with Dubois. We saw Joe get warmed up, put in a good performance. I think he stopped Daniel in the 9th, maybe 10th or 9th round. I think we'll see a similar fight here where Joe will be on his A game. I think he'll be more elusive than he has been before. I think when he fights people who he perhaps doesn't think are elite level, he may not be as elusive. I think he'll be more elusive now. But then as we get further and further into the fight, what will win this fight for Joe Joyce is his natural engine and durability.
Do you feel as though he can't box like he did against Christian Hammer? It needs to be, as you say, when he's boxing a Daniel Dubois, he's not just walking forward and not respecting him.
Yeah,
like
exactly
he did
right.
With Christian Hammer. So you think he needs to show a bit more respect to Joseph Parker?
I think he'll have that respect. I think he switches on himself. It's not like he wasn't switched on about Christian Hammer, but Joe has a tremendous chin. He can walk through shots. I think in the Dubois fight, he got hit with some big shots. I'm not saying he's suddenly going to turn into a very evasive fighter overnight. He's not. He's just going to be that little bit more switched on. I think he will get hit by Parker. He's very fast hands, elite fighter. I think it's going to be a terrific fight. I think going into the last few rounds, it will be very, very tight. But I think Joe Joyce will outlast him, and going into the very later rounds, I think it'll be a late stoppage.
The stakes feel higher. Look, maybe this is just me, right?
Yeah.
It feels like the stakes for Joe Joyce are a bit higher than what they are for Joseph Parker.
Yeah, I agree.
A couple of reasons. He's WBO number one. He could sit there, not fight anyone potentially, and get called for a world title shot. And if he loses, it's a longer road back at 36 years old. What do you think? Why is he doing it? Why is he going for this risky move at this stage in his career?
I think when we started managing Joe Joyce back in 2017, when he was, 31, 32 years old, just turned over to 32. We knew in a kind of game of snakes and ladders, we'd have to go for a lot of ladders. And when you do that, there's a lot of snakes the other side. Like, why would you take the Dubois fight? Yeah. That was a super dangerous fight against probably, aside from Wilder, the hardest puncher in the division. We had to take it because Joe's had to take these risks at every single juncture. He's had to take the risk to go up because of his age. So why are we taking this risk? You're right, we could sit there. He's WBO number 1. We can see if when the mandatory gets called. But Joyce needs to be in big fights. I think that's the thing about the heavyweight division. Unlike other divisions, it craves big fights. Derek Chisora still headlines arenas with 12 or 13 losses. No other division would that happen in. No other division. So it's twofold for me as a manager. I want him to become world champion, but I want Joe in big fights. And I want his name to be recognised, and this does both.
And this also feels like one of those fights where you actually can't really talk too much about the fight ahead, because this is a big one. It's like with Christian Hammer, you always talk about Joe Joyce. With Takam, it was always talking about generally the heavyweight division. You talk about Joseph Parker here because he's the best guy, potentially, former world champion. He's got a win over Andy Ruiz.
Yeah.
Best guy he's fought it could be.
Listen, you're not looking, Joe Joyce isn't looking past this fight. It's a huge fight. It's the biggest fight of his career. You cannot look past it. It's an incredibly dangerous fight. It's not like fights in the past where someone's underestimated someone and then the two happen, the styles gelled, and then you have 2 fights, trilogies, whatever. This is a massive fight now.
It's a massive fight now. It's a massive fight. September 24th, BT Sport box office. Adam, lovely speaking to you.
Cheers, Dev.
And I'm sure there'll be plenty more needle in the build-up.
I think there will be.
I'll see you in a bit.